calling to order the El Monte City School District Board of Education meeting for Monday, December 11th, 2023, and we are starting at 5:04 p.m. We will start with roll call, starting with Ms. Cobian.
Present.
Ms. Flores is absent today. Next, we have Ms. Rivas,
Present.
Mr. Segrist,
Present.
and Mendez Garcia present. Okay. We will next down for the flag salute. Put your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everyone for being here today. We have two exciting items of interest. Our first one being the Golden Bell program for our TK to Kinder Readiness Academy.
Thank you, President Mendez Garcia. Good evening, board members. Good evening, our fellow EMCSD family members. Last week at the California School Board Association, the El Monte City School District was recognized with a prestigious Golden Bell Award for our TK Kinder Readiness Academy. This evening, we have the opportunity to recognize all the individuals responsible for this transformational program. A little bit about the program. The TK Kinder Readiness Academy was born from a commitment to equitable education. It eases the transition from home to school through a unique blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning for our little ones, focusing on literacy, basic mathematics, and social emotional learning to provide a strong foundation for our youngest learners and their families. And the results speak for themselves. In the 3 years that we have been operating this outstanding program, we have seen that students completing the program exhibit smoother transitions into their TK or kinder years, armed with essential skills and socialization. Thanks to expanded learning and opportunity funding, families in our community have access to these vital resources, including iPads, internet hotspots, and many back-to-school resources upon completion of the program. What sets this academy apart is its holistic approach. With a digital library of over 40,000 ebooks, parent education workshops, and engaging family nights, we foster a sense of community and support that resonates with both students and parents, which is truly the El Monte way. As we look to the future, we aim to share this model with other districts, believing in its potential, and the Golden Bell definitely did that. The news is out loud and clear. EMCSD is doing amazing things. We know that it has the potential to transform early childhood education nationwide. And on a personal note, my daughter got to experience this program, and it was just fantastic. Our TK Kinder Readiness Academy exemplifies the power of innovation, collaboration, and a steadfast commitment to shaping a brighter future for our youngest scholars. So on behalf of the board, I want to congratulate the team that put this together, the team behind the TK Readiness Academy. And to start us off, I want to bring Christina Davila and Jessica Pardini up to talk a little bit more about the team and to congratulate them as they were the leaders for this wonderful endeavor. Jessica and Christina?
Thank you so much. We'd be remiss if we didn't start by really pointing out the fact that we've had so much support throughout the last 3 years as we worked on the TK Kinder Academy. Thank you, board members, for supporting us, cabinet members, for all that you've done to help us along this journey. But we also want to make sure that you know that this took a village, that many, many, many people have been involved in this program, and you can see from the list that we've put here on the screen, whether it's ordering materials last minute for us or being the principal that has to organize all of the welcome back activities at your school site, if you were a TOSA that helped with curriculum, or I couldn't go on and on. Would it be okay if we brought everybody up that's here tonight?
We're going to take a picture with everyone, Jessica.
Would you come up if you helped, if you volunteered, if you were part of the TK Kinder Readiness Academy at all? Would you please come up? If your name's on there and you're sitting there,
Yay!
subgroup principals, that includes you, vice principals, Monica, Helen, Rosemary, Rudy, Alba, Joella, I see Renee, Carla. I don't need to say everybody's name. Please come up. Please come up. Margaret, yes, thank you. Policarpo, Robert. Everybody come up if you helped, please. because it really does take a village. There's so much involved and so many moving pieces in the TK Kinder Readiness Academy. And all of these people have given a part of themselves to help make sure that our youngest, our littlest, some can say most vulnerable. I don't know if you would consider them most vulnerable, but our littlest children have a good start and have a really good time during the summer and a great transition to starting school. So we want to just thank everybody who's been involved. It's been a big job, but we couldn't have done it without all of you. So thank you very much. And we
All
have a
right,
little
don't
token.
go
Wait,
anywhere.
Stay.
Don't go anywhere
We
because
have
you're
a-
already here. So we're going to take a picture, and Robert's going to organize this. And if I can have the board please step forward so we can commemorate this one.
We have a little symbol of appreciation for you all to let you know. So you can put it on your desk. And if you haven't been involved in TK Kinder Academy before, or if you have already, we'd love to welcome you back again and again every year as we continue to grow the program and make it even better for our kids.
That is so cute. Very cute. You guys are good. It's like, hey, I was there when it started.
Okay, hold on one second. Edna. You want me to hold it?
We're going to squeeze in a little more, so she wants at the end. Okay, I'll tell you what. There we go. Just a little closer, a little closer. All right, so smile through 1, 2, and 3. Very nice. Great. All right, let's ring those bells on 3. 1, 2, and 3. There you go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
No.
Now it's going to be a true testament to see if we can not ring the bell for the rest of the board meeting, okay?
Not gonna happen.
They're serious meetings, people. Steve, I'm looking at you.
Put that away. Well, on behalf of the board, thank you so much for the work that you've done. It's so important when we're thinking about our students coming into TK and kindergarten that not all students come in with the same skills, the same level and playing field. So anything that we can do to make that equitable so that all students are coming at TK and kindergarten with those readiness skills, as simple as entering the classroom, sitting in your chair, transitioning, all of those student skills are so important and essential before you then pick up a pencil and start learning how to write your name or learning your letters. So thank you for all of your dedication to our students. Next, we have the Robert Bobby Salcedo Esperanza Award, which this year was awarded to Yvette Hall.
Pulling on the thread of excellence, tonight we have the privilege of honoring an exceptional educator whose unwavering dedication has left just a tremendous mark on all of us. Yvette Hall was recognized with the Robert Bobby Salcedo Esperanza Award for the Outstanding Educator at the 20th Annual Tamalada last week. Yvette's journey began as a student in the Almani City School District, attending Durfee and Arroyo High School. After college, she returned to her roots as an educator, driven by a profound love for learning. In her acceptance speech on Thursday, which was just beautiful, she shared her mission to inspire students to dream big, emphasizing the transformative power of a bit of encouragement. She began her career at Potrero School as a teacher in 2012, and in 2019 transferred over to Frank Wright. Her impact extends far beyond the classroom, resonating with colleagues and students alike. Isaac Cuevas, who nominated and introduced Yvette last Thursday for the award, credits Yvette as an invaluable mentor who lights the path for the next generation. Yvette's commitment to education is evident in her role as a pioneer of various programs in our own district, including many of the programs and classes that she teaches for GATE, an education parent camp at Potrero School, and then currently she's serving, she's part of the Pilot Youth Cinema Project, where her students get to create a public service announcement to debut at the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival later in the school year. Please join me in applauding Yvette Hall for embodying the spirit of the Esperanza Award and shaping a future where every student can dream big and achieve greatness. Yvette Hall. So this is an opportunity. I'm going to invite the board to step forward, take a picture with Yvette. And Yvette, thank you so much for just representing our district so well. And I'm so glad that you're all here to celebrate another wonderful teacher in the school district. Yay. This tree.
All right, we'll now move on to if we have any public or written communications at this time.
Do we have any public communication? And no written communication has come forward.
Okay, next we'll move on to our cabinet reports.
All right, President Mendez-Garcia and board members, this evening we have our monthly cabinet update that shares with you the latest things happening across the district, as well as some thinking for the months to come. We're going to kick it off with business services. Mr. Herrera.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So first up, we'll start with some, let's call it good economic news. I guess how we look at it, put in perspective. So inflation is beginning to cool a bit, and so it peaked in the middle of 2022 at 9.1% with year-over-year increases. Doesn't mean that prices are coming down, it just means that the rate of increases that we're seeing prices increase month over month or year over year has slowed down a bit. So recently, the latest report came out and prices have gone up 3.2% year over year. That's still well above the 2% target that the Federal Reserve has put out there. There's a meeting happening later this week where they'll be making a decision on interest rates and whether they'll keep them put, increase or decrease them. But it's good news. It's the slowest increase in the consumer price index since September of 2021. So we'll take it. Now, as we pivot to some not so good news, as inflation begins to slow down, it does impact our cost of living adjustment. I'm sure y'all heard the news when you're at the California School Board Association conference a few weeks ago, the COLA is projected to be 1% for the upcoming fiscal year. And the other not so good news that was received recently was tax revenues came in. The deadline, which typically comes in April every year, was pushed back to May, then pushed back to October, then pushed back to November. So we finally received the news for 2022 tax revenues for the state of California, and they came in $26 billion below the estimates from June of this year when the budget was adopted. So what does that mean for school funding? Well, the impact is going to be about $10.4 billion to Proposition 98. And to put it in context, for every $1 billion at the state level in the Proposition 98 education budget, it translates to about $1 million here in El Monte, right? So that $10 billion deficit is going to be roughly about $10 million here for the Monte City School District. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. A lot of that will depend on what the governor and legislator do in the next few weeks when they release a budget for next year. So there's a couple things that they could do. They could leave the Proposition 98 education minimum guarantee over appropriated at $107 billion, or take action to reduce it down to what it should be at $97 billion. So we'll await their decision in the next few weeks. And as we move on to the next slide, in the next few weeks, we should be hearing Governor Newsom come out with the proposal for the 2024-25 budget year. Should come out by January 10th. And you'll hear some potential solutions, right? We hope that none of these are in place, but these are some of the solutions that the state of California has put forward in years past, right, when they've had a budget shortfall and need to plug the deficit. So some of that could be cash deferrals, mid-year reductions to the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee, a reduction to the COLA potentially, declaring a budget emergency, which in this case would be good news because the state legislator could then raid the rainy day fund, right? There's about $10 billion, I believe, at the state level in the education rainy day fund. So that would be a big help. Or freezing the expansion of certain programs like community schools and ELOP. So I know over the past few years, the administration has been friendly to education, and we hope that continues. But we will wait, and more information will come out in the next few weeks. And the concerning issue is that if revenues came in so low for 2022, 2023 you would expect is also going to underperform, but we will hear the final reports on that in April of 2024 when our 2023 taxes are due. So we hope that there's no reductions to the budget, but we also know that there is a huge deficit that materialized. And normally the state of California would have known of this information 6 months earlier, or in this case, 7 months earlier in April, but the deadline was pushed back to May, then pushed back to October, November. So it is what it is. And that speaks to the importance of having strong reserves or adequate reserves at the local level to make sure that our programming is not impacted when we have these dramatic reductions at the state level. And the next bit of good news is we have some resolutions on the board agenda today for approval by the board. And because property values have increased considerably in the past year or two, we're able to access some bond funds sooner than expected. And so tonight we have two resolutions on the board for approval to access. It would permit district staff to move forward with issuing bonds out of Measure KC and Measure M. That would generate about $7 to $8 million of additional bond funds that we can utilize for critical facility projects that we've identified in our facility master plan. The cost of borrowing is projected to come in anywhere between 4.5% and 5%. We also have a third resolution that we put on for board approval tonight for the potential refinancing of $6.5 million of voter-approved bond debt. If the market continues favorably, we will pursue that refinancing, but we'll make the final determination in January. We figure this is going to be our next opportunity for quite some time, right, to issue bond funds, so we may as well pursue a refinancing. If the market doesn't turn out in our favor, we'll pull back that refinancing at no cost to the district. So we're just trying to pursue any savings we can for the voters here in El Monte.
Good evening, President Mendez-Garcia and Governing Board. I have the exciting news of sharing our work that we've been doing with World Strides to send our fourth grade students on a day-long trip to Sacramento in March, and our eighth grade students on a week-long trip, 5 days, to Washington, D.C. in April. Last week and then over the next 2 days, we held parent meetings, information meetings for our parents to learn about this opportunity for their children that the district will sponsor every fourth and eighth grade student who wants to attend these study trips. The fourth grade trip includes, a trip to the state capitol building, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and even engage in a scavenger hunt at the Sacramento History Museum. In eighth grade week-long trip, they're going to see a lot of different monuments and go to the Smithsonian and go to the memorials and learn a whole bunch related to their eighth grade social studies standards and their fourth grade social studies standards about California. So we sent out an RFP, and World Strides met our needs. They have over 55 years, or they have 55 years of experience organizing these field trips for students, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. 10 million students have taken advantage of these study trips, with just over 500,000 participating annually. And 10,000 teachers who lead these trips throughout the year from every state in the United States. And they're the first educational travel company that's accredited they have WASC accreditation. And 1,000 plus support staff located throughout the entire world. So they really do the heavy lifting for us and ensure that students remain safe and that they receive a quality educational program while they are on their trips. So just pictures of some of the places. This is what was shared with parents that our fourth grade students will participate in. In our eighth grade, again, 5 days with a very full agenda. We had to tell our eighth grade students, I think Mr. Dasmati was chatting with some, and he told them, you are going to be exhausted by the end of the day because the agenda is just jam-packed with so many wonderful opportunities. Thinking back, I think I was in my 30s the first time I went to Washington, D.C., so for these eighth grade students to take this trip and to learn and connect with the learning that they're getting in their classes in social studies is just an amazing opportunity, and I just really want to thank the board for your support with this. So one of the other things that World Strides provides that really met our needs and was really big for us is at the moment that you arrive. So they help us arrange the entire field trip. They help us at the airport. They ensure that there's travel experts there, that they do all the arrangements of the hotels, the flight, everything. And then when we get into DC and Sacramento, they actually have transportation already set up for students. And then they have wonderful course leaders that lead the instruction that's taking place throughout the time that they're there. At the hotel, they check students in, they assign them, and then they have night chaperones that stay up at night to ensure that students are safe, that they're staying in their rooms, and that they are where they're supposed to be, and giving our teachers and our chaperones that will be joining the trip time to rest as well. And then the other piece that they provide is, they have 24/7 staff around the clock to make sure that we have what we need. If we need to call on anyone, World Strides is available. They also have a partnership with the Department of Emergency Medicine at George Washington University. That's for our students that are in DC, that they have access to if anybody requires medical attention. And then also students are insured. There's insurance as well for our students.
Well, good evening, President Mendez-Garcia, Governing Board. I just wanted to take a second as we prepare to move into the holiday season to do just a little quick COVID update in regards to recent and current protocols. So when I say COVID update, it's really not as much an update because there have not been any changes in a while. So it's more of maybe a refresher or reminder as we go forward. One of the main aspects that's still required of us is that we are still required to identify close contacts. We still go out of our way and try to identify specific close contacts as opposed to the everyone was in the room approach. So we're still taking that approach and identifying and communicating directly with our close contacts, so they're aware of what needs to be done as well. We send out our required notifications to all staff or all individuals that were on a campus or in a meeting or anything of that nature where a positive case had taken place. And we have been able to secure plenty of COVID tests, so that way we're able to provide those for any of our close contacts. With the last updates, we are no longer required to provide tests, but we still think it's important to be able to do so. So we have plenty of them at our school sites, in our departments, and then in our warehouse as well, to be able to make those available. One thing to note, for those of you that maybe do have COVID tests at home, and you're looking at your expiration dates, the California Department of Public Health has issued many statements basically stating that even if a test is expired, one of your home tests, they are still usable. And so what you can do is you utilize the test, and if you have the test strip or the test line show up, then you know it's going to be a valid test. So just because they expire doesn't mean get rid of them. You can still utilize them, so long as when you use it, you see the test strip or the test stripe show up on that test. Then finally, we wanted to just kind of share that, coming out of Thanksgiving, we did see a little increase in our positive cases in Los Angeles County and even within our district. But I will, I do want to point out that while we did see that, we're actually still way lower than where we were even at the start of the year at various aspects. So you can see the chart that's on the left-hand side is our daily average percent positive, and you see going back to September 3rd, quite a 15% positive daily rate. And then if you look mid-October, it dropped down to just under or just above 5%. And as you slowly see that increase in October and then beginning of December, it is going up, but still well below the beginning of the year. And then if you look at the chart on the right, the 7-day average, again, looking back in August and September, how high we were in terms of that 7-day average as opposed to or compared to currently back in the end of November. So just goes to show that while we are lower, we still see positive cases taking place. Just reminders that keeping yourself safe, washing your hands, ensuring that if you're beginning to exhibit any symptoms, just to go ahead and assume that possibly you could be positive, or it could be the flu, but you just want to make sure you're taking extra precautions this holiday season.
Thank you, Mr. Sollenbach. I can't imagine a cabinet update without a COVID update, so I appreciate that.
It's been 2 to 3 months without one, so I figured you were missing it. I just didn't want you to go into the holiday season without COVID updates.
It definitely is the most wonderful time of the year because we get to do lots of celebrations in this coming month. Well, not this coming month, we're in the month. And I just want to share just a few pictures that were captured last Thursday in this very room as we celebrated our holiday mixer. It was just a fun celebration. Many retirees came out to just show us the wonderful lives that they're living, and many of us got the opportunity to just connect with one another. I want to just throw out a special shout out for Potrero staff. There was many Potrero staff members present, and not that I'm trying to create a competition, wink, wink, but just want to acknowledge that it was just great to see everybody and look forward to just continuing this wonderful tradition that we have where we get to come together for the holidays. And speaking of celebrations and holidays, our schools are just already in full mode as they continue to just spread that holiday cheer with many different performances. As you can see, this is some of the performances that are taking place in the next coming weeks, and we do invite the board and our school community to be a part of these wonderful celebrations, to celebrate our commitment to the music and arts, and just to hear our wonderful kids shine and to see the beautiful smiles. So you're all invited to hear and see these wonderful performances taking place, throughout the district. And I'd like to just end by wishing everyone a happy holiday season and express my deepest gratitude for everyone for just all of the work that they do day in, day out. I know that this is a really busy time. It's also a joyous time. So I just want to say thank you. And in anticipation of that winter break just around the corner, please make sure that you take care and enjoy that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Okay. Does the board have any questions?
No.
I have a question. I did see, so for the fourth grade anticipated Sacramento, we're looking at March of this school year. What's the one for DC? I missed that.
The week of the 15th of April or the week of the 22nd. So really, it will depend on how many students respond and make that commitment to going.
Okay, so with that commitment, is there, what would that commitment look like? Like what parent, information was given to parent regarding, is there fundraising that needs to be, no? Or is it through our ELA, like, yes, how are we going to be able to send?
It's a
I'm
great
sure, just thinking
question.
about questions that parents may
question.
ask us, so
Yes.
we can give that information.
So we did receive a one-time grant through ESSER for summer school type or outside of school type of activities. So this would help to offset the cost for that. Parents do not have to pay for anything other than send money for students to purchase souvenirs. They don't even have to buy food. It's all covered under this. And so the district is sponsoring the students out of this one-time funding. Is that ESSER, Mr. Herrera?
Yes, it is. We applied for a grant and we received $1 million. We applied for all 14 schools, and thus that's why we are sending fourth and eighth graders to be in compliance with the grant, right? Because we know that not all of our schools are K-8 schools, right? So that's the reason for the fourth and eighth grade.
And there's also the potential for some of the funding to come out of our ELAP funding source as well.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at next for this year.
We are, and I think, so this is our year where we're building our capacity. It's a pilot for us, with the idea that we're all going to learn about the field trips, the offerings. We'd like to create a sustainable model, and we're looking at revenue sources that we can set aside. Of course, there's grant opportunities. The idea is that we want to create something that's sustainable. You heard Mr. Herrera talk a little bit about the economic forecast. And unfortunately, school districts are at the mercy of the tax revenue for the state. But we do have the ability to come together and strategically set aside funds for the things that we value and make sure that, we can create self-sustaining programs. So more to come on our thinking around that, but this is going to be an opportunity for us to learn, what does a day in Sacramento look like? Maybe there's the opportunity for us to create our own programming in the future, as well as Washington, D.C., et cetera.
Okay, no, thank you for that, I appreciate it, because I know with our outdoor science camp, that's also been our goal, to make sure that we are able to maintain that, even with the peaks and valleys of our financial forecast. Yes. Mr. Seegers?
Yeah, the trip to Washington, I would recommend you might add a trip to Arlington Cemetery.
It's on
And
there.
also the Vietnam Wall, because I remember seeing the name Robert Cook from Potrero School. His name's on the wall.
Both
And
of
also a
those.
question for Steve. Is it possible for a student that's not coming to class, could they do it online? Has it ever been thought of maybe a student that's absent could come online and log in and say, here I am, I'm ready to learn?
Are you talking about in regards to if they're out due to COVID or just in general?
In general.
Oh, I mean, Teresa, Dr. Pinedo can maybe answer some of that other questions. I mean, we do offer through our independent study.
But I mean,
program?
let's say a student's out for 3 or 4 days. Is it possible for them to log in and say they can't?
No, so right now, all of our learning is in person.
What if the law were changed and allowed for that? Maybe we could talk to our legislators and account for that.
Well-
What is possible? Anything's possible.
Anything is possible, but I will say this, if a child is out sick, then they need the time to take care of themselves and recoup so that they could feel better sooner, right? It's the idea of us calling out sick, but then doing work at home.
But they wouldn't miss on instruction if they could see what's happening in the classroom, too. That's an added thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and I think one of our biggest takeaways during COVID is as we were trying to provide different learning models, there's nothing like being in the classroom and present.
Thank you.
And so whenever students are absent for 3 or more days, there are some opportunities for them to learn through our independent studies program.
Thank you.
And at the end of the day, we're always willing to work with our families and students to make sure that they have what they need. Our teachers are wonderful. They go out of their way to create some supports when kids are absent to make sure that they catch them up. There's just always a will and a way to make sure that we recoup, when kids are absent.
But it still counts as ADA?
If they make up the ADA through independent studies,
Okay.
yes, or if they attend Saturday school as well.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll be moving on next to board member communications, starting with Ms. Cobian.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who's here tonight for all that you do for our district. Just wanted to share, was at the CSBA conference, and really, I know we're going to talk about more details later, but it's always very encouraging just to see how we kind of, our comparison to some other districts in the state, and how really advanced some of our programs are, and that's always very encouraging. Also, at the Tamalada last week was really very excited to see just how the community really comes together around education. So it's not just the school districts, it's the cities, it's businesses, and a lot of other folks who come along for that wonderful event. I'm really looking forward to some of the holiday performances that are coming up, so that's going to be very exciting. And finally, just wanted to share, over the weekend, a former El Monte City student, who also happens to be my son, qualified for the Junior Olympics in fencing. So I'm really excited for that, and just really hopeful that this community can continue to grow and participate in kind of a lesser-known sport, because there are some really great opportunities out there. So thank you all, and that's the end of my comments.
Ms. Rivas?
Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation at the end of our meeting regarding the CSBA AEC conference that we all attended. It's always a good time for learning, and so looking forward to that discussion later. The Tamalada was a wonderful event, and yes, I agree, the feeling at that event was really the community coming together. And I think it was said, hey, let's set everything aside for the friendship that we have and the common goal that we have in supporting our students. And that really was the sense of the event, really a beautiful event. And congratulations. Oh, she looks like she may have left, but congratulations to Yvette again for being recognized. And then regarding the study trips, I was actually able to attend an info meeting online for parents whose kids may be interested in going on the study trip, and the parents had the opportunity to ask lots of questions, and they did, and our staff people did a really amazing job answering the questions. The meeting was translated into 3 other languages, and the staff people were so reassuring and very warm and patient, and just did a really beautiful job encouraging the families to allow the students to take advantage of the wonderful opportunity. So pretty excited.
All right, Mr. Segrist?
The CSBA was an outstanding event. I learned so much there, and I found that there were many people who were very excited to learn about what we do. They said, "You do all of that?" Yes, we do all of this and much more. I'd like to add something. I was not very happy with the presenter, Sal Khan of the Khan Academy. He never explained what he does. And also, he didn't mention the fact that there's a Mexican counterpart. It's called the Aprende.org, which offers incredible educational opportunities for children and adults. From Mexico, he spent a lot of money putting it up there, Carlos Lemelu from Mexico. I've been in contact with the interim president, superintendent of Pasadena City College, and he's ready and willing to do a dual enrollment with us. He said, Arcadia USD has been doing it for 35 years, and I think that we should push that. I'm a fanatic supporter of community colleges. I'm an alum of Chaffey Junior College, Mount San Antonio College, Rio Hondo Community College, and Pasadena City College. Because of community college, when I went into the military, I went in as an E5, not as an E3. When I went to Cal State Long Beach, then it was college, then the university, I went in as a junior because I had 2 years college done. Think of the savings if your student goes for 2 years to community college for free. They go into the university as juniors. I have 2 grandsons. One's graduating SC in 3 years because of community college. Pepe is graduating Berkeley in 3 years because of community college. We have over 100 students in South El Monte graduating with 2 years already completed with AA degrees. And we can start early because I went with my own grandkids in 5th grade and 7th grade to Pasadena City College taking guitar. It cost them nothing. I audited the class. It cost me nothing also. We need to let the people know more about community college, the benefits of small class size. And yes, you can go with your student if you want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segrist. Just writing something down. All right. So for my board update, just want to kind of share my thoughts with what a great day it was to have like the holiday tea and the tamalada, and kind of just reflecting about, we're always sharing about the importance of building relationships with our students, right? We also have to emphasize the importance of building relationships with among ourselves in our community. So it was just two great events that allowed for that opportunity to kind of unwind, dress up in our holiday attire. And just being able to take the time to share and to talk and just enjoy each other's company. So I'm so glad we were able to do that as a district, as a community. I also just want to acknowledge the City of El Monte and Parks and Rec. We've had such great holiday events as well, from Santa Claus going through town. I went through my house 2 times. I was lucky enough. I was able to go to the Holiday House. And I walked in, there was student performances, and then I know there's something coming up. So just all of these things, I'm just really part of our community, providing these opportunities as well for our families and making these memories for our children, right? Because that's what we're ultimately trying to do is improve our community, make sure that we're serving all of our constituents, including our families. Okay. With that, today ends my official term as board president, and also my 2-year term as delegate assembly member for the California School Board Association. So I just want to thank the board for their faith in me and nomination and voting me to be in both positions. And I'm excited to take a little break from CSBA delegate assembly, but it was a great experience to be able to see another level of being a board member, being at that policy level to know how decisions are being made for education and how bills are being supported, implemented along the way with CSBA, and being able to have a voice, being able to bring that information back to the board, and then as well being an advocate. So learning how to be an advocate not just in my community but at the state level, right? So that was such a great learning opportunity as well with being board president, being able to tie all those things back. So thank you so much for this opportunity that I've been able to have. With that, we are then moving straight into our annual reorganization for the Board of Education for December 2023, and for this upcoming now 2024 by election of officers. So I will pass it over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, President Mendez, and I just want to echo my sense of gratitude to you on behalf of the board and our cabinet, our district, for representing our district at the CSBA Delegate Assembly, and also for your leadership as board president in the past year. We're very grateful for the way you have graciously maneuvered all of our meetings, moving the agenda along, always being student and community centered. We're very grateful for that. We do have a token of appreciation that we will be sharing with you at a later date. So if I can just ask our audience and our board to join me in thanking Ms. Mendez Garcia for her leadership.
Ring the bell.
Very appropriate. And so at this time, the board is asked, Board Policy 9015 requires that the board reorganize once a year. And this is our reorganization meeting where we also adopt our calendar for the following year. And so this evening, we will be taking nominations for board president, board vice president, board clerk, a representative to represent us at the Los Angeles County School Trustee Association, and then finally, we will be adopting our annual meeting schedule. With each nomination, we will deal with one at a time, and we'll take it from there. So at this time, we'll begin with the first item, consideration of approval of El Monte City School District Board President. Is there a nomination?
I would like to nominate Beth Rivas.
I'll second the nomination.
All right, we have a first and a second. Mrs. Rivas, do you accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination.
Wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, 4-0. Ms. Beth Rivas, Board President.
Ring the bell.
Thank you. Our second item this evening is consideration of approval of El Monte City School District Board Vice President. Do we have a nomination?
I would actually like to nominate Christina Flores. She expressed interest in the position, so I know she would accept that nomination, so I will put her name forward.
All right, Mrs. Christina Flores, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mrs. Christina Flores as our Vice President. Yay. Our next item is consideration of approval of El Monte City School District Board Clerk. Is there a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Siegrist.
I would accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, and Mr. Segrist accepted. That's wonderful. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, motion carried.
Thank you, I think.
Congratulations,
Never
Mr.
know till you
Segrist.
get in there. Okay.
All right, our next item is consideration of approval of selection of representatives to the Los Angeles County School Trustee Association.
Would Ms. Mendez Garcia be interested in that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make that nomination.
Then I'll second.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. You accept it. Any discussion? Wonderful. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations, Mrs. Mendez Garcia. And lastly, we have this evening the consideration of approval of the El Monte City School District Board of Education annual meeting schedule.
I'll move to approve the calendar.
Mrs. Cobian is a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Any discussion? Calling for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations to the board reorganization. At this time, we're going to take a break so that we can reorganize our seats. And this is an opportunity to ring those bells. Thank you for being here.
For Golden Bell winners, if you'd like, you can take a picture of the bell in the other room.
With the big bell, as opposed to the baby bells?
Okay, we'll resume our meeting. It's time for the approval of minutes. Consideration of approval of minutes for the November 13th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Cobian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. For the action consent items, are there any items that a board member would like to pull for separate consideration?
I'd like to pull number 6 and 11, please.
Okay, any other items? Okay. Do I hear a motion for the consent items without 6 and 11?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Segrist. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. For item 6, Mr. Segrist, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm getting complaints from people that I know that live in Arcadia that say that some students from El Monte are attending their class, the schools there. And so exactly what is this? I don't understand what it is.
Mr. Segrist, this is a student who initially was a student from Arcadia Unified School District, moved into Hope House, which is now in our attendance area. However, our special education program, autism, is impacted right now, and the student actually requires a non-public school placement. And so in the interim, until we can find placement at the non-public school, she will remain at the Arcadia Unified School District autism program for middle school.
The reason I'm curious is that I know years ago there were parents putting their children in Beverly Hills schools who did not live there. The court decided they had to pay money because they did not live in the district. So I thought it might be a case of that. I've been told there are people that are, what they're doing is renting a motel for maybe a month or 2 months, enroll their children, and unless you check on attendance, you don't know who they are.
So I'd like to just add a little bit more to the conversation.
Okay,
We
please.
are part of a SELPA consortium. There are 14
If it's SELPA
districts.
involved,
Well, there's 14 districts, and we work collaboratively. And so as we have different programs that meet the needs of students, there are many MOUs within the 14 districts to
Okay.
extend opportunities to make sure that students are placed in the right classes.
And they get the right service.
And they get the right
Thank you.
services. And so you see MOUs in different directions, and you're going to continue to see these as we continue to really meet the needs of individual students.
And as a follow-up, are we an open enrollment district? I know Valle Lindo is.
We are not. Valle Lindo is one of the only districts in our area that is an open district.
Okay.
To be an open district goes both ways. It means that there is no process for students to exit the district, as there is no process for students to enter the district. So our neighboring districts, with the exception of Valle Lindo, are not
Okay,
open schools like that.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item 6?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Segrist. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Kobian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And now for item 11, Mr. Segrist, do you have a question?
I am delighted to see that. Based on past experience, when other districts have been doing surplus property sales through auctions, years ago, when you were much younger, so was I was able to purchase 2 computers, $35 a piece. They had sold for $1,400 before I bought them. This allows the public then to go online and find items they can buy. It's wonderful for the community to see this. There are a lot of advantages to this. This is great. I really applaud all of you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segrist. Is there a motion to approve item 11?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Segrist,
And I'll second.
seconded by Mrs. Kobian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to action items. Our first item is consideration of approval of certification of signatures.
President Rivas and governing board members, this evening, the board had the opportunity to reorganize. So before you is the certification of the signatures. At the conclusion of this meeting, everyone will sign into their new positions, and this will be submitted to the Los Angeles County Office of Education.
Wonderful. Are we able to approve this with Mrs. Flores being away?
We will contact Mrs. Flores. We can, as long as she accepted the nomination, we will contact Mrs. Flores. We'll make arrangements for her to come in and sign the form, and then we will submit to LACO. So this evening, you are approving the reorganization, and then everybody will sign accordingly.
Great. Okay, do I hear a motion for item 1?
I'll move to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Kobian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 2, consideration of approval of a memorandum of understanding between the EMCSD and the City of El Monte for school resource officer services.
President Rivas and governing board members, this evening before you, you have the updated contract for our school resource officer. As you know, we have had a school resource officer working collaboratively with our district for many years. Initially, the programs were funded by grants. Once those grants were over, then there was an understanding between the City of El Monte and the El Monte City School District to continue the collaborative partnership. At that time, we were paying a certain percentage of the officer's salary, which equated to about $50,000. So we would look at just the base salary, and there was a 50% split sharing cost to the district. And so with this contract, there is updated language. The language reflects an increase in the total amount of the contract. And also, with this a change, the district was able to negotiate so that the SRO officer is present 5 days out of the week, Monday through Friday, from 7:30 to 3:30, 8 hours a day, and for 180 days. And so before, the contract was just for the year, and it depended on the officer's schedule, which is normally a 3/12 schedule. But with this change, we are now able to extend those services. It is a 3-year contract, and we do have the ability to inform the City of El Monte if there's a change within the contract, given proper notification.
Thank you. if there's a motion and second, then we can discuss. So
Absolutely.
do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion so we can discuss.
Okay. Motion made by Mrs. Mendez Garcia,
I'll second.
seconded by Mrs. Cobian. Is there discussion?
Discussion? Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to discuss. Yeah.
I'd like to say that I am getting a lot of positive feedback from parents who are aware of the SROs in our schools. They really are happy with that. They feel much better about what's happening around our community compared to other communities. And I believe we're pretty unique in what we're doing. It's a great thing that we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, I can start. I have quite a few questions. If you can kind of share the mindset of, we've been paying for a certain amount to have one SRO, and now we're being requested, right, to pay like the full amount. Is there reasoning behind that? If you can share with that?
Absolutely. So initially, the contract was shared, and I will say that this is a similar contract that is before the two neighboring districts in our community. And so as we met with the city of El Monte, they described a shortfall in their budget, so a significant deficit. And as a result, they were asking us to cover the entire cost of an officer for SRO services.
Thank you for that. And obviously, I know we've had discussion on this, and have been aware of this. And one of the things, obviously, the safety of our students is always number one, right? We know that, and we acknowledge that. But also ensuring that as well, even with us, as we're looking at our financial outlook, we're being fiscally responsible and knowing how can we maintain things, right? Even when we're talking about our science outdoor camps filters, we want to make sure that we can sustain it. Looking at what it is right now with the increase, that may be something that we may not be able to sustain. So I would definitely like to start looking at collecting data, right? And I'm kind of looking at the things that they can do, like looking at specifically what are the direct school services that they would be providing versus city services, right? Because as taxpayers, our community, our families are paying taxes to ensure that we're able to, if we need to call the police department, if we need them to come by for an emergency, or if parents want to file a report in any way, right? Those are our city services. So that we can start already thinking about what are things that are city services versus specifically school services, and where can we start readjusting with the personnel that we have.
Thank you. That is a point well taken, and it is a conversation that we had with the chief of police about city services versus school resource services. So I think there is an opportunity in the coming months to really look at our contract, look at all of the services that are being provided, and try to delineate between the two.
You want to go next, and then we'll kind of
Yeah, I have a few kind of contract-specific questions. One is, you had mentioned 7:30 to 3:30. The contract doesn't reflect that
Yes,
timeframe.
so-
Is that different? Okay.
Yeah, the original contract that the city council approved had different hours. And so the high school district starts at 8:30 due to the change in the law. And so they were requesting an amendment to the hours. So I believe the original contract stated maybe 7 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. And so because the high school district adjusted their hours, they took that to the council with the caveat that if anybody wanted to adjust their hours accordingly, it could be done. So I did have a conversation with the chief, and there is communication that's memorialized between the two of us that would specifically allow for our SRO to work between 7:30 and 3:30. And the reason we selected 7:30, our start time is 8 o'clock. We think it would be important for our SRO to be out and present before the start of the school day. They can help alleviate some of the carpooling issues, or just, the morning traffic that we seem to have at all of our schools, and give us some insight on how we can work together with our school community on alleviating some of those traffic issues.
Also, just, and I do want to say, I think there's been some really valuable outcomes from this program over the years, so I think it's a really positive thing. One of those is having the officers present at varying events that happen during the school year. And I noticed in the first section of the contract, it says special events and on-campus activities will be included as a part of the activities for their schedule. And then later it talks about that being an additional charge to the district. And so I just wanted a little more clarification there.
So as it stands, the hours would be 7:30 to 3:30, 180 days to match our calendar, our student calendar. Any event outside of that time, we would have to pay for overtime for that, for our SRO officer to participate in those events.
And then kind of piggybacking on that part, so we are not year-round. Does the officer continue to serve the district when students are not on campus? And is this cost reflective of that, are we paying a full salary for a full year, 12 months, or is it a percentage of what the officer is actually making?
It was adjusted. The initial proposal from the city of El Monte was for the entire year. But given that we have winter break and Thanksgiving break and spring break, those aren't traditional, those aren't times that people normally take off in a 12-month job outside of education. And so also summertime. And so the agreement was for 180 days. So this contract reflects 180 days of service. And then once again, it's aligned to our calendar for students. So when students are at school, that's when we have an SRO officer.
Next question I have. In the local areas, what's kind of like the standard that typically school districts that have their own police department would usually typically pay? I know we looked into that. If you could share that.
We did. So we were able, because we have these collaborative meetings with many of our local partners, that is the standard, that most cities do pay 50% of a police officer. And there are a few exceptions in the San Gabriel Valley, but the majority of the school districts do have a collaborative partnership. I think just alone in the El Monte Union High School District, they serve the city of South El Monte, they serve the city of El Monte, and the city of Rosemead, and the city of Rosemead continues to pay for 50% of the salary. Now, they contract with the sheriffs, so it's a little different. But the norm throughout our region is cost sharing.
No, I just want to acknowledge that, right? That's why we're having that discussion, because for us, again, safety is number one, but we have to also acknowledge that it's going right from 50% to 100%, and that's why we want to make sure that we're really closely looking at this. We know, I acknowledge that we're already almost mid-year through the school year. We have a lot of systems already in place where we've had this SRO for many years, and I know I want to make sure that if and when we decide to transition to something else, right, we're prepared for that, and so I do acknowledge two things, right? That we're in this right now. We're kind of everything's in place. All the things that the SRO currently does with education, with the community, with the students. And so knowing that the contract ends June 15th, I did see that for termination it's 90-day notice. So how does that play with that June 15th date? If we were to relook, when would we need to be relooking at this contract?
I would need to calculate the exact date, but we would have to give 90 days notice before terminating the contract.
Before
yes.
June 15th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so, and it's a 3-year contract with that 90-day notice.
Okay.
I had another question related to the selection of the SRO, because it's a little bit unclear to me. I mean, it talks about having a representative on what I assume is an interview panel, and really want to acknowledge they're wonderful officers. Some are very good at working in the community, some are very good at working with students, and we want to make sure that we have those who are going to best serve the needs of our students and our families. And so I think I would like to ask for a little bit more clarification in the contract in terms of what that looks like, both for the selection of the officer, particularly since we will be fully funding that position, as well as there's some discussion about the substitute should the SRO not be available. Again, we would want to make sure that somebody who came to fill in a classroom or whatever is prepared to deal with students, that not every officer has that kind of training or kind of preparedness. And so making sure that as a district, we know who those people are going to be and that we have, I think, ultimate say in deciding who those people are going to be. So again, there's some language about kind of being assigned someone, and it may just be in clarification because I know you've had some discussions.
Yeah, I've had, that was one of the areas that the 3 districts asked for more clarification, and really wanting to see language that reflected the ability to select officers with the understanding that the police department, the city, could do a lot of vetting before they bring the officers to the school districts, with the understanding that they would all be viable candidates for an SRO selection process. However, this was language that the city was also very somewhat positional on, in making sure that they had the ultimate discretion and autonomy to select the final officer with the contribution and discussion with the school district.
Another question I have, it says that the SRO will be supervised by the Community Relations Officer Sergeant of the Monty Police Department. Is there any supervision at the district level?
There is. And it's not so much supervision, but more of an accountability, making sure that we have, the SRO has been a thought partner in how they provide services, and so we want to make sure that still remains. This Director of Student Support Services ultimately oversees this contract. And so in this case, it would be Mrs. Tran. Also, Mrs. Fidel, our Child Welfare Coordinator, works hand in hand with the SRO, and they would help create schedules if they need to vary from week to week, if we want the SRO to participate in, for example, different mornings after school, be present during those drop-off pickup times, and then creating the schedule for the day. It will ultimately fall on the Director of Student Support Services.
And I may have missed this. Is there anything that says regarding scope of service regarding like training or educational programs that the SRO would do with parents, like providing parent trainings or staff trainings?
So with this contract, in years past, because it's been a contract that, the hours necessarily didn't match our school calendar or even our days, and because there was a cost sharing, there were often times where we were just, we didn't have the autonomy to necessarily plug in our SRO to different spaces. And we would definitely send out invitations, and things that were planned in advance were things that we were able to do. With this new contract, there's much more autonomy. The police officer, the SRO, will be reporting straight to the Almonte City School District in the morning. And then they will be leaving. So it's the beginning and the end of their day, and we have the autonomy to schedule the day. And that's, to your point, that's one of the things that we're looking forward to, because we believe we'll have, much more flexibility to enhance the programming that we already have in place, and enhance many of the opportunities to utilize our SRO resources proactively. And so, currently, our SRO officer can get pulled in the old contract, could get pulled to do patrol work or other assignments if there's a need with the Almonte Police Department. Under this new contract, the officer will not be pulled. They will be within the district for those 5 days, 8 hours a day, unless they're sick and there's an opportunity to send in a sub, or unless there is training. And that's something that we also discussed extensively, because we want to make sure that the training meets our needs. And I understand that, for now, it's just a very specific training, and most training opportunities will be scheduled during vacation times when the students are not in session.
Okay, I just want to make sure, right? Just because looking at the scope of service and delineating between, again, that service and how they're supporting our multi-tier systems of supports, prevention, right? The training. And so I just want to make sure that that's something that we're really utilizing our SRO for within our MTSS tiered approaches, parenting training, besides, obviously a lot of the language reads about citations and so on. And when I'm seeing citation, again, I'm seeing that as like that typical, police officer city service, when wanting to make sure that the roles, again, really tying into that prevention and intervention.
Agreed.
I have a question also. When they the SRO comes on the campus, is there like a general assembly where the officer is introduced to the children and the staff so they know who it is? So that if they have a problem, they know who to talk to? That he's
Yeah.
there to protect them, or I should say she also, because I hope we have some lady SROs too.
We do. Our current SRO is actually a female, and she's been working with us since last year. She's doing an extraordinary job. I will say that our SROs, there's always that opportunity to meet and greet new students.
Meet and greet, thank you.
And I think with this new contract and with the autonomy that we have for those 5 days, there'll be more of an opportunity for the SRO to interact with students proactively
thank
versus reactively when something happens.
And then I've got just two
Oh, go
more.
ahead, yeah.
Sorry. One is like section 3 where it says the term, and this is just a small thing. I assume it's from a previous contract, but it references paragraph 7 of this agreement, which doesn't actually correlate with the term of the agreement. So that's probably a typo. And then also in item number 7, work shall be performed at any school facility of the El Monte City School District within the city limits of El Monte. And I know we have 2 schools that don't meet that criteria. Will the officer be servicing Rio Hondo and Clemenson as well?
Yes, so it's the fact that it's a school facility within the El Monte City School District, there's an understanding that it's still part of, our, at Potrero and
Yeah.
Clemenson and Rio Hondo, we have students that live in other cities, and obviously those Clemenson and Rio Hondo are located in Temple City and our unincorporated Arcadia, and so they still provide services. There is a penal code that determines, like, if there is something, for example, something where they would need to file a report, then they would collaborate with the sheriff's department, who services Temple City and Arcadia. So we've seen that through the years, where we'll first call El Monte PD, we get some guidance from our SRO, and then ultimately the reports need to be filed with the sheriffs so that they can continue providing those services to close out a case. So that'll continue as is.
Okay.
Almost done. One more.
Okay,
one more.
go ahead.
I know we have counselors at our school sites. How many social workers do we have, or do we have?
We do, that's a good question.
I believe we have 3.
Yeah. Coming from that mental health perspective, right? Maybe just seeing how our current city services in LA County are really making sure that they're pairing up not just law enforcement, increasing law enforcement, but also increasing social workers addressing, mental health. So again, I just want to make sure, just with staying in my position, understanding that our systems are right now in place with the SRO, but I would really want us to consider in the future, not just for financial reasons, but just looking at how to better serve our students, making sure that, again, what would be the best way to support our students with prevention and intervention, including safety, thinking about other ways that we could possibly, contract. Maybe in the future we would see that it's not something that we need every day, but something that maybe we need a contract for those specific things about training, active shooting trainer training. I participated in one. It's, I very much advocate for all of those things related to ensuring our schools are safe, for any type of situation that may happen. But just continue to explore how to better serve, and just really looking at what our students need and what we really need in our multi-tier systems of support, looking at mental health, so all of that. So I just really want to make sure that we are hopefully moving in that direction.
Definitely. I think this gives us an opportunity, and as I think about the work that we are reflecting on currently with community schools, there's always an opportunity for us to audit our programs, our services, and to make sure that we're meeting the mark. And so we'll just continue to do that with our SRO contract as well. And then really taking note of how we utilize the services proactively to make sure that, we're really curbing down on any issues that we want to address, and then addressing MTSS supports.
And Dr. Garcia, if I may, just to kind of clarify to the termination clause, it's within the term, and the term is a 3-year term. So we don't necessarily have a June date for termination. We actually can get to June and we can start a new year and then determine, at this point, we would like to terminate, and then it would be the 90 days from that point. So it buys us a little bit time, and it doesn't lock us into a full year at a time, because as it's defined in there, it says the term of the agreement, which is a 3-year term.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any specific items in the contract that you would like to send back for further negotiation before approval?
Yeah, so that
of
was going to be my
questions,
next
so-
question, because I know I seconded a nomination to approve, but I kind of withdraw that because I think there are some things we would like to have adjusted before we approve. So some of them are just those small things where I think there's some references to things that are not in the contract.
Definitely number 3.
Yeah. I think, and the hours for what our district specified, I think some more clarification in terms of the applicant pool or the selection process. And one other question I kind of had there is, because I know we have our other 2 districts that are negotiating these same contracts. Is it going to be something where if we identify someone we would like and Mountain View identifies the same person, I know it's worked out before, but, having sort of some specificity about how those decisions are made as well. I think the item 7 about the El Monte City School District, so, probably striking the language that it has to be within the city limits of El Monte. And I think those were my key items there.
Thank you. Well, Mrs. Cobian has withdrawn her second. Is there a second, or do we decide to table this until another meeting?
I would like to move to table it to see a contract with that language.
First, it has to die.
Oh,
The
sorry.
motion needs to die, or there needs to be just a
Withdrawn.
withdraw, yes.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my
So unless
second.
there's no second, then the motion dies.
Okay, so there's no second? Okay, so then the motion dies. Is there a different motion?
So I will move to table this item to our next meeting and asking the superintendent to look into those items as well. I know there may be some negotiations involved, so authorizing those negotiations.
Happy to do so.
Okay, and is there a second on Mrs. Cobian's motion to table and send back for further clarification?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Board, for the good discussion. Item 3, consideration of approval to adopt Resolution 232414, authorizing the issuance of Measure KC general obligation bonds.
Thank you, Board President Rivas and members of the Governing Board. Before you is a resolution that would authorize district staff to proceed with issuing approximately $2.5 million of voter-approved bond debt. I know in the resolution we have an amount that is higher than $2.5 million. We never know when we go to market. I think we indicated $3.5 million. The market could change favorably, right? We don't expect that. So our best estimate at this point is $2.5 million of voter-approved bond debt that we would be accessing at a cost of borrowing between 4.5% to 5% cost of borrowing. And the financing proposal, if approved, the resolution, we would then move forward with agendizing this at the County Board of Supervisor level for authorization before we move forward to go to market sometime in late January, early February.
I'll move to approve item 3.
Motion made by Mrs. Cobian,
I will second.
seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 4, consideration of approval to adopt Resolution 232415, authorizing the issuance of Measure M general obligation bonds.
Similar to the board resolution that was just approved in the previous action item, this is an issuance out of Measure M. We are expecting $5.5 million of voter-approved debt via Measure M passed in 2014, and we would group the 2 bond sales together at the same time that we go to market in late January, early February. Between the 2 KC and Measure M issuance, we're expecting to pull anywhere in the range of $7 to $8 million of bond funds that we can add into our capital bond fund, so we can really go into this facility master project prioritization process knowing the full amount of funds that we have available to spend.
Thank you. Is there a motion on item 4?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Kobian. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 5, consideration of approval to adopt Resolution 232416, authorizing the issuance of 2024 general obligation refunding bonds.
Thank you. This is a third resolution that we're seeking for approval. There's a low chance that we would move forward with the actual refinancing, but there's no cost to the district, and so there's no harm in requesting the authorization of this resolution. As we're going to issue new bond funds, it would be an appropriate time to seek the opportunity to refinance existing debt, so we can always make sure that we are fulfilling our role as a fiduciary to the voters that approve this debt. The approximate amount of funds that hopefully we would refinance is $6.5 million. Right now, we would generate a few $100,000. If the market continues to work in our favor, we will move forward with the refinancing, but we'll work with our underwriting team and our financial advisors to make that final call in January. We don't want to move forward with the refinancing if it's not in the best financial interest of the voters. But by allowing this resolution to move forward, there's no cost to the district and potential savings to the voters. We'll make the final determination in a few months when we go to market.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item 5?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by
I'll second
Mrs.
it.
Kobian and seconded by Mr. Segrist. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item number 6, consideration of approval of resolution 232417, Outdoor Equity Grant Program.
Thank you, President Rivas and members of the governing board. Before you is a resolution that would permit district staff to proceed with applying for the Outdoor Equity Grant. The application is due later this week, but as part of our application, we have to have this resolution approved by the governing board. It would fund up to $700,000 for the El Monte City School District students to participate in outdoor experiences, think study trips to state parks and other public lands. So we're very excited about engaging students in the educational opportunities. If we're awarded the grant funds, we hope to bring back some good news in the next few months if awarded.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item 6?
I'll approve.
Motion made by Mr. Segrist.
I
Yep.
I will second.
Seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 7, consideration of approval of 2023-24 first interim financial report.
So we have our Director of Fiscal Services, Ms. Margaret Lamb, that will be providing a budget update on the first interim to the Board of Education and our friends here in the audience. So I'll turn it over at this time to Ms. Margaret Lamb to update the Board of Education on the financial reporting timeline that we're at every December, which is our first interim.
Sorry. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Garcia, members of the cabinet, and members of the public. Tonight, I will be presenting an overview of the district's 23-24 first interim. If you have any, if a question arises throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask them. So the first slide that we have, we're currently on the December 2023, so we're presenting the board. In this timeline, we have the board certifying for the first interim for 23-24 first interim report. And tonight, we're asking the board to certify the first interim financial report. It's being submitted to board with a positive certification. So these are the different funds. The district has more than the general fund. It's composed, we have other funds as well. It's just that the general fund composed around 85% of our funding. But we do have, of note, we have our cafeteria fund, which is projected to end with a 2.6 million surplus. There's going to be an expected ending balance of around 10.7 million, but this funds are accounted for, we have to submit to the state a plan on how to use it. So we have like a lot of modernization effort that's being done in the cafeteria program. We also have the building funds is also included as part of the district's facility strategic plan. So we are estimating that we would be spending about 6.9 million of our building funds this school year. So we have a total of 198.9 million in revenues and 216.5 million in expenditure. So our revenues is mostly composed of our LCFF, which is 108.2 million. This is about 56% of the total revenue that the district is getting. Next comes our federal revenues, which is about 25% of the district revenue. We need to note that the 49.4 million in federal revenue is composed of one-time funding like ESSER 3, 19.9 million, and the connectivity fund, which is about 400,000. So that's approximately about a little over 40% of our federal revenue is expected to drop by the following fiscal year. So our state revenue is about 16% of our about 16.5% of our revenues. It's mostly really like the big chunk of it is the ELOP program, which we received 13.9 million of revenue from the state. And then there's the STIRS on behalf of. I know the amount looks big, but it's just a pass-through. We recognize the revenue and we recognize the expenditure. There's nothing really for us to, like, it's not an extra that the state is actually giving us to, to help us out with our pension. It's actually their share, just, they have to pass it on to the school to make the accounting work. And then the local revenue is about 8.6 million, which is around 4%. Most of it is the special ed. The reason why we have our special ed revenue in the local side is because we're part of the SELPA, so they pass it on through us through a local revenue code.
Well, just a quick comment, Margaret, as you go back, something that the board should obviously make note of that is something that was not apparent in years past when we brought these reports to the board. Our ELOP program, right, our under the state revenue source, expanded learning opportunity program. When we think about our after school and before school programming services, the ACES allotment there of $2.6 million is what we've been seeing the past 20 plus years or so. When the ELOP program was introduced, I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago, and we've been building it over the past few years. It's now becoming a little bit more mature as you see more and more program rolled out. It is something that is allowing us to be able to expand these offerings with our intersession days, with our before and after school programming, all the fun stuff that Dr. Pimenero shares in her updates and cabinet updates are funded as a result of the ELOP program. So as we look at the financial potential concerns that we see at the state level, we hope that that funding will remain in place because we see all the great things that we're able to do with the funding. It's about 4 or 5 times the amount of funding, maybe 6 times the amount of funding that we've seen in years past, right? The ACES was about maybe $2 or $3 million of our budget, and that ELOP programming has been a welcomed revenue stream for the El Monte City School District, bringing in north of $13 million. So something that we thought was one-time funding when it came in back in 2021. When it came a second year, we said, okay, we're thinking it might be ongoing, and now we've seen a third consecutive year, and we're hopeful that the funding stream continues going to 2024 and beyond.
Yes. Right now in the Ed Code statute, it's actually considered as an ongoing funding. It's a change that they did with the most recent enacted budget. But as Mr. Herrera said, we are anticipating some revenue reduction, and we're hopeful that ELOP won't be part of it. But it's everything is on the table right now, I guess. It would be nice to be part of the DOF discussion that's happening in the state level and what strategies that they're plotting. right? So another important to note, I forgot about it, but the Prop 28 Arts, we reflected a 1.3 million. That one, the Prop 28 Arts was a arts program, was a voter initiative, but it's also connected to Prop 98, how big or large the Prop 98 is. That funding also goes up and down with it.
Okay.
So the next slide, the next few slides, we would be showing the general fund. So in the general fund, this is the 23-24 first interim estimate for the general fund, which is about 85% of our total budget, whether it's revenue or expenditure. 33% is in unrestricted, and the restricted side is the remaining 67%. It used to be that the unrestricted side is the bigger portion, but we have we have influx of one-time revenue, so that's why there's a little bit of imbalance between unrestricted and restricted revenues. So our key expenditure, majority of our expenditure remains to be with our personnel or like staff. So you would see that certificated, classified, and employee benefit is composed most of the expenditure. What is important to note is we still have like that 53 million contribution to the restricted program. About 34 million of that is for the supplemental and concentration. That's their share from the LCFF revenue of 108 million. That's the supplemental and concentration. So when we have, I think coming January, like we'll have the LCAP update, you'll see where we are going, with the district, where the district has been investing those funds for various programs. And then we have the 13.3 million support to special ed. Again, like the state and the federal government has not been fully funding special education. So now it's up to the school district to actually backfill in order to provide the level of programming that our student needs. And then you have the 3% statutory routine facilities maintenance requirement. That's the 3% of your total expenditure you have to invest for your facilities needs. So if you look at the reserve levels, we have 6.5% in unrestricted, and restricted has 34%. This has been because the district has been very strategic in trying to spend those one-time money. They're trying to not go all out and just create new programs that would disappear the following fiscal year. We've been very strategic in where do we spend it, how much is the return on investment per se of this program, and can we really sustain it. So we would end up a year with an ending balance of about 40% for 23-24, but only 6.4% of that is in the unrestricted side. That's the caveat. So as a part of the first interim, it is required for the district to actually not just look at the 23-24 year, but to look at the succeeding 2 out years. So if you notice, the of note is the unrestricted reserve. We're seeing that it's going to go down from 6.4 to 4.5% and a 3.9% by 25-26. So a good news story for the first interim is that when we submitted our CBEDS data for 23-24, we did note that our enrollment numbers is actually matches last year's enrollment number. Does not necessarily mean that it's the same. If you look further into the details, you'll see that our TK and K enrollment, actually, our expectation on that was low. The actual was actually lower than what we expected. So that's why for the 24-25 and 25-26 fiscal year, we are still experiencing an enrollment drop, but instead of a 3.5% enrollment drop that we were estimating in June, we adjusted it to reflect a 2% a 2%, an average 2% drop for 24, 25, and 25, 26, which we would continue to adjust as we get more live birth data and like as we, go out further into the fiscal year. So these are the other planning factors. Our first interim does not include any salary increase or employer contribution increase. We're still in negotiation, so it's still like it's still like we have not reflected anything. What is important to note is the 24-25 funded COLA. In June, when we went to board for the budget, the funded COLA that is expected for the 24-25 is about almost 4%. It's 3.94%. When we were building the first interim, the first number that was out there was like a 1%. So that's what we have. Right now, the LAO, I think, is saying it's about 1.27%. So closer to 1% than the 4% that we're anticipating. So just so that we like have common understanding of like what do they mean by COLA? COLA is a cost of living adjustment, and it's really changing the looking at the rate of change from one year to the next. So that means everything else remaining constant, your enrollment and everything else, this is the rate that you would expect your per pupil revenue or even your total revenue to increase. Right? But it does not necessarily translate to an automatic increase in LCFF revenue. The COLA increase is normally offset by impact of the declining enrollment, student attendance rate that we see a drop from the pre-pandemic era to now. We're still in the recovery mode. We have not hit that pre-COVID attendance yet, and like our current month attendance, just maybe because of like the holidays and whatnot, we do see a drop in the attendance there. So right now we're still maintaining it at what we have as an attendance level as of last year. And then, of course, the unduplicated count. There's some slight changing demographics that we do see a drop of like our unduplicated count dropping. So we are right now averaging at about 86-87% of our students being counted as unduplicated. So this chart shows you, the blue chart is the LCFF, the growth in LCFF revenue or the change in LCFF revenue, and the orange is the COLA rate for the year. If you notice that even with the COLA rate increases, in a normal year, most of the LCFF revenue does not increase proportionately. It's not a one-to-one increase with the COLA increases. The only exception is the 18-19 year, and the reason behind this is the 18-19 is the year when LCFF became fully funded. So the state were flush with money and they fully funded LCFF. Good for the education community. So the LCFF increase during that year was higher than the COLA. And then another area where you might see that LCFF increase higher than the COLA is the 21-22 year, and this is the year that they changed the LCFF formula to add the concentration grant, the additional concentration grant, which the district received about 2.6, 2.7 million that initial year. Right now, it's a little bit slightly higher. And then the rest of the year, you would see that like even in 22-23, with the super COLA that they had of an additional 6%, totaling to about 13.26 increase, almost should be increased if nothing else have changed. The district's LCFF revenue only went up to the 9%. And this is all because of other factors as outside of the per pupil rates for LCFF. And for the following fiscal year, you would see almost like a spread of 5%. So for the 24-25, this is the next June, we'll be talking about 24-25. You would see that if the expected COLA is at 1%, LCFF revenue actually dropped by 4%. And this is because the enrollment decline provision catch up, and it's just that our ADA, our funded ADA, continues to drop, right? So what are the next steps? So we have the Legislative Analyst Office just released their California Fiscal Outlook. I think Mr. Herrera in his cabinet update did mention that the 2022 tax receipt is actually down by 26 billion. If I calculate it based off of like the last apportionment schedule from the state, it's probably going to be about 18 million for the district. And then not only that, but with the decrease in the tax revenue, there's the 2023 is now looking a little bit uncertain as well, just because if 2022 is lower by 26 billion, what would 2020-23 tax receipt look like, which we would know in April, and they said that the education portion of that would be approximately about 16 billion. So the 6 billion in tax receipt translate to about 10 billion over implementation of Prop 98 for education. And then there's another about 6 million based off of the revised estimates for 2023. So the total, just for the 2 years alone, would be about 15.4 billion, which translate to about 26 million if the state doesn't do anything and just repeg Prop 98. So what we have right now is the board. So the next steps, we're asking the board to actually adopt our 23-24 first interim report. What we wanted the board to know is that things are changing as we speak, and January might look a little bit different than what we're presenting tonight. But we're actually still hopeful because Governor Newsom, in his term at the very least, would be announcing the proposed 24-25 budget, and we are hopeful that he would try to continue, or the state or in the legislature would try to continue to protect education funding, maybe by accessing either the state rainy day funds or trying to do away with some, maybe they would find solution that's not as harmful to education. There are some talks in the state level for like maybe looking at like funding that has not been allocated. Unfortunately, some of those funding we're currently applying for. So we're hopeful that they're still going to try to protect education as much as they could, right? So another thing that's going to be happening in January is we would be submitting the 22-23 audited report. We would be presenting it in January of 2024. And of course, in March, we'll have the second interim, and the second interim should reflect any proposed changes that the governor would have in the January proposal. So if you have any questions.
I just have a question with regards to the unrestricted reserve, and I know there was kind of the sidebar about 25% was the state average a few years ago. Is kind of the philosophy, I know we're kind of decreasing our reserves. Is it that we're still seeing this as sort of weathering a storm created by the state?
Yeah. That's what like if we are to emphasize something, having a local reserve that is outside of the state rainy day fund is super critical to like the district in order for us just to like almost bridge the storm, right? And the way that the district has been doing it is that for like say for our ESSER funding, we have been strategic in like what do we fund with ESSER, and then can we instead of like just blowing up and like buying left and right or expanding a program, we've been very strategic on like what can we fund with ESSER, and then can we save some money in the other sides. That's why if you notice our restricted funding is actually balances are very high, but we've been very cautious in trying to like let us the plan is to help hopefully those funding would help us bridge and give us time to actually look at our programs. So what is our priority for those? And it would not be, almost like it would give us a softer landing than like just a cliff of like everything is gone the next year. And then that would give, not finance, but like as a district as a whole to actually look, these are the programs, this would be our priority, and how maybe we could like, because it's restricted funding, maybe we could like help redesign a program where some of the things that we are actually doing and charging to like base or whatnot could be redesigned in such a way that it could, another funding source could be identified to actually fund it. That way we keep or we protect what's really important and what's making our student like achieve, like, have those academic achievement that we're pushing for.
Thank you. I just want to say I really appreciate that perspective, so thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve item 7?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Cobian. Any seconds?
I will second.
Seconded by Mrs. Mendez Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you so much. Item 8, consideration of approval of amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding for a teacher residency program between the El Monte City School District and West San Gabriel Valley SELPA.
Governing Board, before you is an amendment to a previous MOU that was brought before you and approved, and this is in regards to an agreement with the El Monte City School District and our SELPA to fund residents. And what a resident is within this program is similar to our student teachers that operate a certain number of days to get their credentialing aspect taken care of. This is actually a full-year program through the Alder Graduate School as well. And so we have special education students that are working on their SPED credentialing, and they commit to a full year here with a mentor teacher. And then at some point, they become partner teachers. And so the previous MOU was to fund and pay the student $30,000 for the year, and the SELPA was able to secure some additional funding, and so they increased that amount. So this amendment reflects the increase to the student-teacher portion of that.
Is there a motion to approve item 8?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Cobian. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Segrist. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to our discussion session. And I want to take a moment to thank Mrs. Mendez Garcia for her wonderful job as board president. Just always ran a beautiful meeting and so prepared and really led the board in accomplishing some important tasks. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure you were the one to set these items on the agenda so for discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through them. Number 1, CSBA discussion. Is the intention to do our full discussion right now of the things that we learned at CSBA, or is the wish to discuss at another time?
I think I'd like to ask if we can table that item just until Ms. Flores is back, because I know she'll have things to add to the conversation as well. But I want to, and maybe it's for future discussion items, but I would like in particular to bring back a separate discussion related to AI information. That was one of the big topics that I attended several sessions on, and I think it would really be helpful to us as a board to have that discussion. One of the main messages was being very proactive because this is definitely a technology that's here and going to affect all of us in a variety of ways. So that would be a separate ask, I guess.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. You're right, that was the topic of the conference, I think the most frequently brought up topic. Any other comments about the discussion? Are we good waiting until Mrs. Flores returns?
A number of staff in our district have approached me, and they say they would love to have us evaluate what's happening on the campuses. They want to see if we could increase supervision possibly doing what some private schools do. They have parents who have the time, or older adults who have time to just be physically there, trained to do whatever they need to do on the campus, because if, with so many children doing so many things, maybe we should consider increasing supervision some way. That's one item.
Thank you.
And another one?
Yeah, you know what? We'll just go in order here, and then I'll come back to you, Mr.
Supervision.
Segrist. So number 2 here on our agenda, CSBA delegate nomination.
Oh, yeah, I
Mrs.
forgot
Mendez
about
Garcia, I'll
that.
let you talk about that since you were our most recent delegate.
I just want to put this in as an agenda item. So we belong to Region 23B specifically. And so there's Mr. Briones, Mr. Carranza, and myself. So specifically out of the 3 of us, my term is up. So I just wanted to open up that if there were any potential board members that the board would want to nominate for the nomination. So just wanted to, but it,
Do you know the time frame for the nomination?
it's, we would need to nominate someone now. I do know that there is another, other boards within 23B, they would be nominating someone. And so we'd have to nominate someone now because applications are due January 17th or early January, I believe. So just wanted to have it as agenda item.
Yeah, the nominations are due Sunday, January 7th.
7th, not 17th.
And if the board would like to make a nomination this evening, you can certainly do so. Then I would then confer with the person to make sure that they accept and work with the nominee to submit all of the documentation that's entailed in order to get onto the CSBA ballot. And then, as you recall, CSBA then gathers the ballots and they gather the statements. They send them out to the school boards, and then the board would take formal action on voting for a delegate at that time. So I guess the question would be if there's anybody here that's interested to represent the region as a delegate.
Or to nominate someone within 23B.
Yes.
I'd like to pursue that if possible. If no one else wants to, I would like to consider that, to learn more.
Do we need to formally nominate? Or
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'm not interested, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn.
There is, and I can also reach out to Mrs. Flores and give her the opportunity to look over this information and see if it's something that she would like to consider.
So this is not something that requires formal approval by the board?
Right. At this point, it's just somebody coming forward and say, I'm interested. Now, the board can certainly say, we'd like to nominate somebody from another district. And it's still, they would need to accept because they would still need to submit documentation to be on the ballot. So you're not taking any formal action, you're making recommendations.
Very good.
Yeah, and then there's an online link of submitting that there's someone has nominated themselves.
Okay. I think it's a good plan. Are we good on that? Mr. Segrist and Mrs. Flores can look over the information and see if they're interested in nominating themselves. Okay. Very good. Item 3, future discussion items. Mr. Segrist, do you have any future discussion items?
I'd like to see us pursue the dual enrollment with PCC. And also, the president of the First District PTA, Mrs. Diane Highland, would like to come to our board and address the lack of PTAs in our district and the neighboring district. Mountain View, by the way, has no PTAs at all. And we have schools, I believe, that do not have them. And a question came up, are we allowing PTAs to have funding, to have fundraisers on the school campuses? I'm not sure, because I've been told that they're not sure if they can have fundraisers. And that's one of the lifebloods of a PTA, is having fundraisers. So is there a policy, yes or no, on that?
I nodded yes as a note taken to have the discussion around PTA. And no, there is no policy against fundraising.
Thank you.
I did make the recommendation in the last several years as our PTAs were trying to, as we were getting back after the pandemic, Oftentimes, our PTAs will host events that will require some fees for students.
Right.
And so the message that I shared with the PTAs then was, there is an opportunity to use some of these one-time monies, such as ESSER, to create activities that we would support financially as a school district and
Like
as a school
assemblies,
community.
that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And the idea was that, our community, really, there was a lot of hardship during the pandemic. And as people were trying to stabilize their finances, we didn't want to impose any fees on families and parents in order to participate in activities. And so when you think about the partnership between our parents and our teachers association, I don't want them also to see themselves exclusively as a fundraising mechanism. We really want them to be part of the philosophical and cultural development of that school, and we really want that to take off. So, of course, fundraisers are part of that, and there are some fees within the PTA structure that they have to cover. I've shared this numerous times at our monthly council meetings. I'm happy to reshare, and as you know, we're very committed to being a PTA sponsor in our district.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more item. I'd like us to entertain bringing into existence again the LA County Spelling Bee. And it is not really a problem for the teachers, it's the parents at home and the children involved in that. Because I hear neighboring districts like Baldwin Park and Glendale, and they're always bragging that their kids are in the county spelling bee. And I think that the fact that I remember my neighbor, who now, I believe she's a nurse now, she won our district, a girl from Vietnam. And I just think it's another opportunity. And I don't want to add too much on, but I don't think it's really that involved for teachers. I think it costs $250 to enter it. So I'd like to see us to pursue the spelling bee, because the deadline's approaching.
Thank you, Mr. Segrist.
You're welcome. I'm done.
Mrs. Cobian, do you have any items for future discussion?
I think so. The artificial intelligence items, I think, would be a good future discussion item.
Fantastic. Any others, or for you, Mrs. Mendez-Garcia?
Yes. Now that my term is up as board president, delegate assembly, I wanted to kind of refocus some of my energy into special education.
Thank you.
In our district, obviously, people know my background is I currently work in the special education department, and as I've been able to visit campuses and have conversations with some of our special education staff, just kind of looking at our continuum of service options, least restrictive environment, inclusion. So just something that I will kind of want to let the board know that I will kind of start looking at, and want to possibly obtain more information, go do some classroom visits, and have as part of our discussion items, possibly.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, may I do something that I forgot, and I really feel terrible, that at the 20th anniversary of Learn, our superintendent gave an incredibly wonderful speech about education. I forgot to mention you. I apologize for forgetting.
Thank you, Mr. Segrist.
Well, thank you all. I think that wraps up our meeting, so I'd like to adjourn our meeting at 7:17.
Well done.